In the year 1938, 1 year before the Holocaust, one of the greatest of the Zionist leaders, Zev Jabotinsky, stood and looked about Europe, the Jews of Europe, knowing that a terrible tragedy loomed, knowing that he was opposed bitterly by the Jewish leaders, knowing that he was banned in synagogues, organizations, and he sought some way to persuade the Jews of Eastern Europe to flee before a flood of fire came over them. And he wrote an article, and he spoke of the tragedy in the form of a parable. And he wrote, Europe is a stagecoach, and the driver is foremost, and the horses are racing wildly towards the precipice. And in the coach sit passengers, eating, drinking, laughing, talking, as if nothing has happened. And one of the passengers turns on the others and he says, let us do something. Let us stop the horses. And they continue to eat, and to drink, and to laugh, and to live as if nothing was happening. Jabotinsky was unable to stop the horses. And the coach that was Europe went over the precipice and carried with it its 6 million passengers. In great measure because the Jewish leaders, in terror and in fear of the message of Jabotinsky, refused to allow him to speak. I came to this city because once again we are in the coach. And the driver has fallen off. And the coach of the Jewish people in the state of Israel is racing madly towards a terrible, terrible precipice. And once again, Jewish leaders, tiny people, narrow in vision, unable to grasp great issues. Once again, unable to debate issues, turn to defamation. And defamation has always been the last refuge of non-thinkers. Can't debate, call names, smear. Worse, not only are you afraid to listen, you attempt to prevent others from listening. The Jewish community in this city this past week has been tainted. It has been diminished. I was not the loser for it. Far, far from it. The losers were the Jews of this city. In the hands of people who look upon the community as some kind of a feudal barony, some personal fiefdom. They can decide who will speak, who will not speak, what views are kosher views, what views are not. The outrage that not a single synagogue was willing to open its doors. No room at the synagogue. No room at the synagogue. And so it's with tremendously mixed feelings that I speak here today in a church. I want to thank the pastor for being a better Jew than the rabbis of the city. Certainly a better person. And yet at the same time, it's with a feeling of great, great pain that he had the courage, and not one rabbi. I'm grateful that you've come, because I have things to say that have to be heard. And no one has the right to tell you what you can hear. You have to come and listen and decide for yourselves. I may be right, I may be wrong. I may be crazy, I may not. Things that I have to say are things that carry within them the future of Israel and your future. But your future is always linked, totally linked to that of the Jewish state. If God forbid there will be no Jewish state, there will be no Jewish survivor in Sarasota. This past month has been a difficult month for us in Israel. And in a certain sense, what has happened in the past month typifies, it exemplifies what has been happening to us over the past 3, 4, 5 years, and the change that has taken place in Israel. Three weeks ago, a young couple, he 25, she 23, were walking in the old city, Jerusalem. Jerusalem, the capital of Israel. The capital of a proud Jewish state. An Arab walked over to the couple, asked the husband for the time. He started to answer. The Arab shot him in the head and killed him. In broad daylight. A week earlier, the body of a soldier was found. A soldier who did not die in battle. Whose body was found in the fields of a kibbutz, Kfar Mazarik, in northern Israel. His head had been split open with a hatchet. He was born a Dutch Christian. He came to Israel searching, looking. He found Judaism. He converted. Naturally, according to Halacha, became a good Jew, a religious Jew. Joined the army. He became a Jew, but not for very, very, very long. He lived as a Jew for a year and a half. He was converted by Arabs inside the state of Israel. Chanoch Denmark. 3 days earlier, another soldier, Alexander Arad, a kibbutznik, a member of Peace Now, a fighter for coexistence between Jews and Arabs, a hater of Kahanism. Peace Now, stood at the Megiddo crossroads. For those who don't know where that is, perhaps 5 kilometers from Afula, in the Jezreel Valley, in the heart of Israel. We're not speaking of the borders, occupied territories. We're speaking of the heartland of Israel. Towards his left, perhaps 20 meters away, was the military prison. Soldiers watching and seeing everything. Broad daylight. This Peace Now soldier was approached by an Arab who in broad daylight stabbed him, killed him. Peace Now. For 2,000 years, we Jews had no state. For 2,000 years, we lived in the degradation, in the shame, in the fear of the exile. For 2,000 years, we dreamed of a day when we would arise from that fear and degradation and have our own state and live tall and strong and proud and free, no longer afraid. We have a state today. We are no longer afraid. I tell you that Jews today are afraid to walk in the old city. That Jews today are afraid to walk from the Damascus gate, Shar Shechem, to the Kotel, to the Western Wall. I tell you that that is the greatest degradation imaginable. I remember when I founded the Jewish Defense League, the JDL, in Brooklyn. It was because Jews were afraid to walk in Brooklyn. I went to Israel, and I found Brooklyn. This is the dream, this is the vision. This is the vision that Jews were from in their own state. A child is late, coming home by an hour. Immediately panic. What happened? God forbid, who knows? This is the dream. For this we waited and prayed for 2,000 years. And who hears of these things? How many people in this room know of these names and know of these events? American Jews are victims. They are victims, captives of an establishment, the Jewish leadership. That doesn't want you to know these things. That wants you to believe in this incredible delusion of coexistence between Jews and Arabs. Coexistence between Jews and Arabs. In the meantime, I'm waiting for coexistence between Arabs and Arabs in Lebanon. It is a pleasure to see how Arabs live together. It is a pleasure. Shiites, Sunni Muslims, Druze, Christian, Hezbollah. Each one massacres the other one. But of course we shall live with them. Yes, of course. 6 months ago, I sat in a military courtroom in the city of Lida, Lud, where your airplanes land when you visit Israel. It was a military trial of 4 Arabs who had murdered a young soldier named Moshe Tamam. I would venture to say that there are not 2 people in this room who heard of the name Moshe Tamam. A young soldier murdered by Arabs. No rabbis gave sermons about Moshe Tamam, as I'm sure rabbis gave sermons about the poor victims of Sabra and the other camps in which Christians massacred Muslims in Lebanon. At that time, rabbis gave sermons and beat their breasts. Moshe Tamam was never the subject of a sermon in Sarasota. That I know. Never been here, but I guarantee it. Let me tell you about Moshe Tamam, so that you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about, and why I say the things that I say, and why I advocate what I advocate. Moshe Tamam was a 19-year-old soldier. What is 19 years? It's a child. You begin to live yet. For 1900 years, for 2,000 years, we waited for the concept of a Jewish soldier. Because for all those years, there were no Jewish soldiers. Everyone else had the soldiers. We dreamed of Jewish soldier, Jewish strength, Jewish money. And here, August of 1984, at the Betli crossroads, which 5 kilometers in Netanya, and Netanya is also not on the border. It is in the heartland of Israel. Here stands a Jewish state, a Jewish highway, and a Jewish soldier named Moshe Tamam in a Jewish uniform and a Jewish rifle under a bright Jewish sun. And he waits and he's hitching a ride. Now I will tell you what I heard with my own ears at that trial. Because I know that it did not appear in your local Jewish paper. It was not mentioned by your local Jewish rabbi or anything else that is Jewish. A car drove by and stopped, and in the car were 4 Arabs. I know that you will immediately think, you will have the image they were probably bad Arabs. Perhaps from Jordan or the occupied territories. They were not. They were Israeli Arabs. Arab Arabs. From the town of Bakal Galbia, Bakal Galbia is a town in what is known as the Little Triangle of Israel. 10 kilometers from Netanya. 4 sovereigns, young Israeli Arabs, to whom we had given everything. Their parents, illiterate. They educated. Gave them jobs, even at the very moment when servicemen mustered out of the army did not have jobs. Education, jobs, a house, and the car in which they rode. The car stopped and they asked the young soldier, "La'an chayal?" Where to, soldier? And he did not know that they were Arabs, because they drove in a car with Israeli license plates, because Israel is a democratic country. And of course, we don't ever want a soldier to know that these are Arabs, because that's not nice. That's racist. He might know that they're Arabs. They stopped the car. He told them where. They said to him, "Get in." He got in the car. They took him to Bakal Galbia. And there for 2 days they tortured him. They took out his eyes, and cut off his sexual organs, and murdered him in cold blood. And you didn't hear a word of it. You only hear when Israeli soldiers shoot Arabs that are stoning Jews. Then you suddenly hear, and then we beat our breasts again, because Jews suffer from a particularly Semitic form of AIDS, which is called guilt. We feel guilty about everything. My God. No matter what is done, we feel guilty about it. I was at the funeral of Tamar, and his mother said to me, "At least if he had died in battle, it would have been partial comfort. My son had fallen in battle for his people. To be killed in this way." And she was right. And she was right. Today the Army orders soldiers not to hitch rides except in certain spots. And women soldiers may not hitch rides at all, because we are a confident nation. We are builders, a nation of strength without fear. But the tragedy is, the greater tragedy is that no one in this area even knows about it. And all they know is that Kahane is some racist who for no reason at all wants to throw the Arabs out. The poor Arabs. Rami Chaba was an 8-year-old child. I knew the family. I know the family. They came from the slums, Tel Aviv. And they moved to the Shomron, to Samaria, to a settlement, because they wished to start life anew with their little child, who at that time was only 3, the child Rami. Fresh air, clear air, countryside, mountain. Rami Chaba's body was found in April, 200 meters from his home in a cave. His face had been beaten so badly that there was no face left. Every week they kill a Jew in Israel. Every day bombs are found. You ride in a bus in Israel, on a Jewish bus, and every bus in Israel, every Jewish bus has a sign on it, which reads, "Beware of objects of suspicion, a suspicious object." And if one sees such an object, panic breaks out. They stop the bus, they flee the bus, they call the police, the bomb squad, go off the area for 2 hours. Ride with me once on an Arab bus, Hebron. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. There's no sun. There's no need for a sun. They never found a suspicious object on an Arab bus. They went calmly, tranquilly, and happily. Sometimes I think that we're not a normal people. Sometimes I think that we need a national couch. The real tragedy is, and the real danger is, not Arab bombs. The real danger is Arab babies, demography, and democracy. Let me put it to you quite frankly. There is a basic contradiction between Zionism and the Jewish state on one hand, and Western democracy on the other. And if that is a painful thing to hear, so be it. Truth was not made necessarily to be pleasant. And unpleasant facts do not become less of a truth because of their unpleasantness. And these are the kinds of statements that drive the Jewish leaders in terror and in panic, because they want you to believe that Judaism is Thomas Jefferson. It is not. Zionism, Western democracy, immutably contradictory. And let me tell you why. And listen why, so that you'll save the Jews of Israel, not only from Arabs, but from themselves. So that you'll come back to your Jewish leaders in the city and say, we heard Kahane speak. Why don't you debate him? Why don't they debate him? I'll destroy him. There's a contradiction. Why is there a contradiction? Listen carefully. What is Zionism? Zionism is a movement for the establishment of a Jewish state. Herzl wrote a book which is called The Jewish State. Zionism. Now, what is a Jewish state? What is the most minimal definition of a Jewish state? One which every Zionist, a religious, not religious, right, left, everyone could accept. What is the most minimal definition? Obviously, a Jewish state is a state with a majority of Jews. Is there anyone who thinks that one can have a Jewish state without a majority of Jews? You can have Brooklyn, but you can't have a Jewish state. Only with a majority of Jews do we have sovereignty. Are we masters of our own fate? Are we captains of our own ship? That's what a Jewish state is about. We control our destiny after having lived for 100 years plus as a minority at the tolerance and intolerance of everyone else, and we enjoyed such wonderful minority benefits as crusades and inquisitions and pogroms and Auschwitzes. So finally we decided never, never again, and we wanted our state, a Jewish state, a majority of Jews, always. That's what a Jewish state is. But what does Western democracy say about this nonsense? Jews. Western democracy says, whoever's the majority is the majority. Everybody's equal. If you're Jew, Arab, Chinaman, Swede, doesn't it? Is there a contradiction? Of course there's a contradiction, a basic one. And the reason why there are no Jewish leaders sitting here now with me in debate is because they know that I will ask them the impossible question. Do the Arabs have a right to peacefully, democratically, non-violently have enough babies to be a majority and vote Israel out of existence? Yes or no? What can they answer? Yes? Then they're anti-Zionist. No? Then they're Kahane. Except not quite as bright. Of course there's a contradiction. I know it and the Arabs know it. We understand each other. Neither of us can understand Jews. What is there not to understand here? The tragedy is that liberal Jews have contempt for Arabs. They have contempt for human beings. They think that you can buy people. How many times have you heard, you came to Israel, found the desert, turned it into a garden. Try that once on an Arab. And you know what they'll say? They'll say, you're right. It was my desert, now it's your garden. Liberals think that you can buy everybody. If we raise the Arabs' living standards, then they'll be good Arabs. If we give them indoor toilets, then they'll be good Arabs. Well, people whose minds run to the toilets probably think so. Is there anyone in this room who thinks that you can buy a person's national pride by giving him an indoor toilet, electricity, raise his living standards? Not by bread alone does man live. Not by bread alone does an Arab live. Does anyone live? Has a need for his own nation. You think that there's one Arab in Israel who believes that living in Israel, he's living in his own nation, in his own state? How many Arabs do you think enjoy living in Israel, which is known as the Jewish state? How many Jews do you know would like living in Jerry Falwell's Christian state? Tell me. How many Arabs do you think enjoy living in a country, Israel, which has as its basic law, the law of return, a law which says that Jews, only Jews, have an automatic right to come to Israel and become citizens? You can imagine how that throws them. By the way, if that law which was passed in 1950 by Ben-Gurion had not been passed, and if Meir Kahane would come next week to the Knesset and propose that law word for word, do you know what they would call me? A racist. Why is this law not a racist law? Because it was passed by Ben-Gurion. How many Arabs do you think enjoy singing their national anthem, Hatikva? Picture this. Picture the Arab standing with his shoulders back and his chest thrust out as he sings the words, Nefesh Yehudi Homiya, the soul of a Jew yearns. He breaks down in tears. What an emotional heart. And when he concludes his national anthem with the words, Hatikva bat shnot alpayim, the hope of 2,000 years, tears run down his cheeks as he thinks to himself, how my Zayda waited 2,000 years for the Jews to come home. On Independence Day in Israel, every year the Arabs rush out happily into the street to celebrate their defeat. If it weren't so tragic, it would be good material for a new book on a film, with a joke, with a parody of all logic. There's not one Arab in Israel who would not rather live in the same country called Palestine. Not one. And one who thinks that there is has greater contempt for Arabs than even I believe that liberals could possess. I respect the Arabs, and I understand them. That's why I want to throw them out. If I thought that I could buy them, like all the foolish liberals, I'd play that game too. You can't buy them. They pose a terrible threat because their birth rate is enormous. Their birth rate is 4 times that of the Jews. They have babies and Jews have abortions. 30,000 last year. What a tragedy that is. 30,000 young Jews murdered while the Arabs have babies. Not only do Arabs have babies and Jews not have babies, because Jews are an interesting breed. They read about overpopulation in Pakistan, so they decide not to have babies. We shall even it out. Not only that, but there is no Aliyah today. Who's going on Aliyah? How many Zionists in Sarasota going on Aliyah? The Zionists of this country do their Zionizing out of 515 Park Avenue at the Jewish Agency in New York City. It goes on Aliyah until the Zionist leader reaches the age of 75 and then takes his pension. There's no Aliyah. Jews are not going. Are not going to Israel. Quite the contrary. Jews are leaving Israel. If not for immigration quotas in this country, half of Israel would be driving taxis today in New York City. And that's not funny, that's a tragedy. It's a tragedy, because the question that every Jew here has to ask of himself and herself is, if we continue in this way, without a war, how many Arabs will there be in Israel in 10 years? As citizens, because we want them to be citizens, of course. How many Arabs will sit in the Knesset in 10 years? How many Arabs will sit on the Committee on Foreign Affairs and Security and listen to the top secret report from the Chief of Staff? Perhaps the Chief of Staff will be an Arab. Good thoughts, never thought about before. It's a democratic concept. Why not do we have a consul general today in Atlanta? An Arab. Why not? An ambassador, Chief of Staff, Prime Minister. Why not? The Galilee today has a majority of Arabs already. I'm not talking about Samaria and Judea and Gaza. I'm talking about the Galilee. The Galilee. Northern Israel has 53% Arabs. And going strong. Have you ever been, not as tourists, but have you really seen cities in Israel such as Jaffa and Ramleh and Lida and Akko? These are cities that in 5 years will be Arab cities. We sit democracy. I am for democracy for all Jews, not for a democracy which will be a weapon to put an end to the Jewish state. I have no problem. There is a contradiction between a Jewish state and Western democracy. I choose a Jewish state. I'm not ashamed to say it. There's only one answer to the Arab problem, and it is a problem. A problem that threatens our existence. And it begins with our understanding what would happen to us if the Arabs had the power. And for that, you have to know history, not history of 3,000 years ago, or 2,000 years, or 1,000 years ago, but of 60 years ago, and 50 years ago, and 40 years ago. In the 1920s, Arabs massacred Jews in cold blood in Jerusalem, in Jaffa, in Hebron. In one day, 67 Jews were massacred in Hebron in 1929. Who was inciting the Arabs then? Kahane? He wasn't even born. Between 1936 and 1938, 510 Jews were murdered in cold blood by Arabs. What was bothering them in 1938? I always used to wonder what was bothering the Arabs, what led them to rush out into the streets with axe and knife and shout, Idbaq al-Yahud, slaughter the Jew. What was bothering them in the 20s, 30s, 40s? And I never knew the answer until I began to read the literature of Peace Now, or Peace Instantly, Peace in 12 Seconds, until I began to read liberal thinking, Balfour Brickner, Arthur Hertzberg, B'nai B'rith, the American Jewish Congress, and I suddenly realized they have the answer. When they say the obstacle to peace is the occupied lands of 1967, you see, that's why there's no peace. Because the occupied lands of 1967, I suddenly realized, voila! That's why they massacred the Jews in the 1920s. Why didn't I think of that? Oh, to be as clever as peace now. Or as Shimon Peres and his parasites. That's why they turned down the UN plan in 1947, which would have established a Jewish state and an Arab state called Palestine on the West Bank. That's why, because of the occupied lands in 1967. Of course. The logic is impeccable. Impeccable. I commend it to the Sarasota JCRC. The reason why the Arabs massacred the Jews in the 1920s is the reason why they will massacre us again in the 1980s if we would ever be so insane as to give them that power. Let us understand one thing. There are no Arab moderates. Well, nonsense, this newest concept of Arab moderates. There's even a better concept, a newer concept, moderate terrorists, who presumably kill Jews moderately. Arab moderates? Who is an Arab moderate? Who is the epitome of Arab moderation? King Hussein, of course. Hussein of Jordan, of course. Now, I don't know why he's moderate. He's short, perhaps. That's the reason. An Arab moderate? This is an Arab moderate? This man who every day says there will never be peace unless Israel gives up all of what he calls the West Bank and East Jerusalem. Who do you think had the West Bank and East Jerusalem on June 4th, 1967? The Hadassah? King Hussein had it. And he went to war. You don't have to be more than a sophomore taking a 1.1 logic course to realize that if someone has East Jerusalem and he goes to war, he might be wanting West Jerusalem. He might. Of course, that's what he wanted then, and he wanted West Haifa and Tel Aviv and everything else, and that's what he still wants. But they have gotten smarter today. They've gotten clever. You start 4 wars and you lose 4 wars. You begin, if you're clever, to say, let's try it another way. Moderates. There are no moderates. There are 2 kinds of Arabs, clever ones and stupid ones. The stupid ones say exactly what they mean. The Jews into the sea. The clever ones mean the same thing, but don't say it. They've learned the classic lesson. If you say nice things about Jews, they'll throw money at you, or the Sinai. You want peace in Israel? I have an instant answer. A guaranteed peace plan. Guaranteed. I may indeed form a new group called Peace Instantly. Shalom Miyad. Peace instantly. You want peace? Instant. Guaranteed. Give up Israel. You'll have peace. That's not my way of peace. Zionism did not come into being for peace. Know that. It came into being for a Jewish state, hopefully with peace. But peace or no peace, a Jewish state. And there may not be peace for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, forever. There may not be peace. We little children think that every problem must have an answer. It's not true. It's not true. There's some problems that simply do not have answers unless you want to commit suicide. The obstacle to peace is the existence of Israel. The Arabs sincerely believe that it is Palestine. The Arabs sincerely believe that they have as much a right to live in Jaffa as in Shechem, in Haifa as in Hebron. And they're right, there is no difference. They're both ours. They're all ours. The time has come for Jews to stop wanting so desperately to be loved. We have a terrible, terrible sickness. Having suffered for 2,000 years, we have this intense need to be loved. Let me tell you when the world loves Jews after every Holocaust. Do they love Jews? Then they build forced commissions and monuments and plaques and requiem masses. Well, I don't want any of that. I'm sick and tired of Kaddish and of Yortzeit. I'm sick of people's love. I want respect. And you don't get respect by asking for it. You get respect by having self-respect. And who cares what the world says? Decent Gentiles will understand. Indecent ones, who gives a damn what they think? And that's how one has to start thinking. Love? I'd rather have a Jewish state that is hated by the whole world than an Auschwitz that's loved by it. It's about time that people said it and heard it, because what I say is in the hearts of almost every single Jew in this room. And the fear of saying it, but what will the Gentiles say? How little you know the Gentile. The average Gentile is a decent person who understands people that have self-respect. Can't stand whiners and complain, and can't understand a Jewish kind of a mentality that when it is hit, the Jew stops and says, what did I do to deserve it? Who says you did anything to deserve it? Normal people are hit back. Let's become normal again. And stop having what the rabbis call Rachmanut shel Tifshim, the mercy of fools. Jews should have mercy, but not the mercy of fools. Not mercy for our enemies. To love one's enemy is in the Bible, but it's not our Bible. You've been reading the wrong one. I don't love my enemy. I have no great thrill in contemplating someone who, if he could, would kill me. The rabbis say, if one comes to slay you, slay him first. That's not Kahane, that's in the Talmud. And if it makes you sad, you can burn your local Talmud, but don't burn Kahane. And above all, know Judaism. And the average Jewish leader in this city wouldn't know Judaism if he fell over one. And the best thing going for the average rabbi in this city is that his congregation knows less than he does. Judaism, I'll debate any rabbi or all of them together on Judaism and what Judaism really says about all these issues. Ramesses, the blind leading the blind. Today at our press conference, various people raised the issue of violence. Kahane is violent, that's terrible. It's terrible. Hanukkah is coming soon. Beware of that holiday. Beware, beware. I understand that there are temples that put on plays on Hanukkah in which all the little children play the Maccabees and they all throw flowers at the Greeks. No one threw flowers at the Greeks. The Maccabees fought the Greeks with weapons and they killed the Greeks because they were fighting for Judaism and their homeland. That's Hanukkah. You are celebrating and you are glorifying a holiday of Jewish violence. Thank God. I live in a Jewish state which exists only because, thank God, we have the capacity to use violence. Of course, violence is a terrible thing. Of course, it's a terrible thing. It's a terribly necessary thing sometimes. We live in a terrible world. And of course, I share the great, great hope that the words of the prophet Isaiah will someday come to pass, and the nations shall beat their swords into plowshares. But in the meantime, while they have swords, I don't want plowshares. What is this incredible
inability of Jews to be winners. We have an intense inability to get used to winning. We have been losers for so long. We can't quite get used to winning. We have died for so long that living becomes difficult. But I want to tell you something, that I think that winning is infinitely better than losing. I enjoy winning very, very much. And I enjoy living infinitely better than dying. And that, my friends, is called normal. Not extremist. That is called normal. Ask any of your friends in the Faith Baptist Church, because they are normal. The Arabs must go. And I want an exchange of populations. I don't hate Arabs, I love Jews. And if you think that that is easy, it is not. It is not. But sometimes they are a poor thing, but my own. I want an exchange of populations. Beginning in 1948, Israel took in 800,000 Jews from Arab countries. 800,000 Jews came from Arab countries to Israel. Now let's complete the exchange. Now let's take the Arabs from Israel to the Arab countries. And may they live well and happily and in peace, and I wish them well there. They have 22 countries, 22 Arab countries. We don't have 22 countries. We don't have 20 countries. We don't have 2 countries. We have 1 country. And that is ours, and not 1 centimeter of it shall not be ours. I'm waiting for the Syrians to talk about compromising on Syria. I remember that great Arab moderate, Sadat, who said, not 1 grain of sand will remain in Israeli hands in the Sinai. I respected that man. I wish we had people who thought in that way. Give up land, give up land. I wish Jews thought like Kansas farmers. A Kansas farmer goes out at 4 a.m. and he sees someone building a house on his field. What does he do? Multiple choice. A, he walks over and says, good morning, sir. I realize this is my field, but let's compromise. You take half. You had better believe that that's the wrong answer. He takes a shotgun and he says, fella, 3 seconds, off. But we said, yes, it's really our land, but for peace, let's give it up. For peace, let's give it up. Let's have a peace conference. What a magnificent idea. Let's have a peace conference and call in all the objective nations like the Chinese and the Soviets. Of course, what a wonderful peace conference. The last such peace conference was held in 1938. It was called Munich. It turned out to be a pieces conference. Pieces of Czechoslovakia were handed out. Peace conference. Let's bring in the British, the French, let's bring in everybody, the whole world. Let's bring in Togo, why not? Why not? Welcome. Let's have an African representative to tell us what we should do with our own fate and our future. It's nobody's business. Nobody's business. The state of Israel came into being through no one's help. The UN passed a partition plan. The Arabs said no. Who helped us? Who helped us? The Americans helped us. The Americans imposed an embargo on all weapons in the Middle East. General Marshall called in, at that time not quite Israelis yet, he called in the Jews who would become representatives of Israel in March of 1948 and warned them not to declare a Jewish state just because America would not help. That state came into being not because of Harry Truman or Joseph Stalin. It came about because 6,000 Jews died fighting, fully 1% of the entire country at that time. 6,000 out of 600,000. You don't give up land. If the land is really yours, you get up and you say, it's mine, and you make it part of the state of Israel. And if the Arabs like it, fine, and if not, go to hell. Who cares? In the Middle East, there is a perception of strength or weakness. And if they perceive weakness, you're dead. They understand only strength. Not for nothing does my support come in such great measure from Sephardic Jews in Israel. They are the last normal people. They didn't learn about Arabs at some ADL seminar. They learned about Arabs because they lived under Arabs. They lived with Arabs. They know what Arabs are. That's why they back me. They're normal people, untouched by college professors. They're streets-wise. They know what life is about, not what I would like life to be. It's nice to know what life should be, but in the meantime, know what it is. Know what it is. I want the Arabs to go, and they're going to go. Those who will go freely will be given compensation for their property, which is more than they gave to the Jews of Arab countries, who left behind billions of dollars of property and received a penny of compensation for it. Who gave the Jews of Iraq compensation? Morocco, Syria, Egypt. Who? But I'm better because I'm not an extremist. Therefore, we are prepared to offer the Arabs compensation. If you leave quietly and peacefully and quickly, you'll get full compensation, not quite full. 10% taken off the top into a special fund to go to Sephardic Jews to repay them for at least part of their property, which was taken from them by Arabs and who never paid them back for it. Those Arabs were not ready to leave happily. Will leave unhappily. This is the game plan. We're talking about the survival of our states, of our people. Talking, but it isn't nice. In 1945, the Poles and the Czechs expelled 12 million ethnic Germans. Does anybody here know that? Some of you do. Some of us lived at that time. In that period, 12 million ethnic Germans who had lived there for 1,000 years. In Silesia, in Danzig, in Depenland, were thrown out. Why? Because anyone who knows pre-World War II history knows what the Germans did in these two countries as a fifth column to bring on Hitler. So after the war ended and the Czechs and Poles licked their massive wounds, they in their own way said never again. And they threw them out. You think that one Pole said, but how are we going to throw them out? What is the world going to say? What if they fight back? Stop telling Polish jokes. Start telling Jewish ones. The Poles were normal. They threw them out, and no one fought, and no one shot, and no one anything. They left because the Poles had the power, and the Czechs had the power. And what did the world say? Nothing. The day that the Arabs in Israel put on their radios and hear that the new Prime Minister is Kahane, will be a mass flight. And I wish them well. And hope that their brothers will take them in as we took in our brothers who fled Arab countries. I'm ready to help them organize the UAA, that Arab appeal. I'll give the first check. Let them live happily, and let me live. Good neighbors, we shall be. Good borders make great neighbors. If we don't do that, Israel will be a bloodbath. In 10 years, and you'll be sitting here watching on NBC or CBS or ABC every night how Israeli soldiers shoot Arabs in the Galilee. You want that? Just do nothing, and you see it. And you see it. I don't want to kill Arabs, and I certainly don't want Arabs to kill Jews. They want the Arabs out. I want them happy in their countries, and we in our country. Will there be peace then? Of course not. I'm not talking about peace. I'm talking about survival. Survival. That comes first, and then we'll work on peace. One other point which I think must be mentioned, especially at this time. You people living here in America, I want you to think very, very carefully about your future in this country as Jews. Indeed, your future in this country as people. Your future. Don't ever let your Jewish leaders tell you that it can't happen. Don't ever let your Jewish leaders tell you it is absurd. Kahane is crazy when he speaks of anti-Semitism being a serious threat. Kahane is paranoid. First of all, paranoid Jews tend to live longer. That's the first thing. And secondly, when the Jewish leaders say this is absurd, this isn't Germany, I want you to know, neither was Germany for a long time. In the 1920s, as Jews lived well in Germany, and some Jews said to the Jewish leaders, this fellow Hitler, they said to him, what are you crazy? This isn't Poland. It's true. Poland is Poland, Germany. Each country has its own way. The Jews of Germany lived at least as well as you do here. The Jews of Germany love Germany in a way that it is almost impossible to even comprehend. They didn't even call themselves Jews. They called themselves Germans of the Mosaic faith. They loved Germany. There was a foreign minister, a Jew, in Germany in 1922, Walter Rothenau. In 1922, when was the first Jewish Secretary of State here? In 1972. And that was only because he fled Germany. No German Jew believed it could happen there. Germany was the best of countries for the Jewish people. You think that the Germans were the worst of the anti-Semites? Insane. Poles, Ukrainians, Slavs, Slovaks, Lithuanians, Romanians, Hungarians, infinitely more anti-Semitic. Germans were the best. The best. And the collapse and the horror came not because Germans were different. If you want to speak about racism, you hear Jews say, well, the Germans are different. The Germans are different. They're not different. They're not different. They haven't got horns, they haven't got tails. If I thought that they were different, I'd feel better. At least there's an excuse. They're not different. Human beings like everyone else. What happened was that there was a terrible economic collapse. And people had no future, no jobs, no hope. And someone who has no hope will follow anyone who offers him hope. That's what happened in Germany. That's what happened in Germany. There was an economic collapse, and people followed Hitler because he gave them hope. You want to tell me that that could not happen here? The trouble is that Jewish leaders here have not the slightest idea what people really think about Jews. Because they, for the most part, hang out with decent Gentiles. At dinners and national conference, Christians and Jews, they sit and talk and exchange flattery and jokes and compliments and plaques. That's where you will find out what people think about Jews, at a dinner, at a banquet. There's only one place, and that's in a bar, in a neighborhood bar. If I had the power, I would compel every rabbi in Sarasota, get thee to a bar for a week. Get thee to a bar for a week. Sit there quietly and listen as the schnapps goes in, what comes out. Or the jealousy and the envy and the hatred. The Jews on this, the Jews this, Jew. And that's when times are good. What happens if, God forbid, there should be a real economic collapse, and we have seen signs already? What will happen when they foreclose on the NFL and the beer? What will happen here? Who will be the scapegoat? The blacks? The blacks? They'll blame the Jews for everything, including blacks. That's the reality of life. Don't sit and think it can't happen here. It could, and it could happen with all the horrors. And think about it carefully, and about our future as Jews and where it should be, and especially the young people here. Especially the young people here. Go to Israel. First summer. Register in a yeshiva. Any yeshiva, at any level. If you don't like it, leave. If not, stay. And write to your parents and say, I'm staying. So they won't be happy. Not the first time you haven't that, but at least this time for something good. Stay. Where in the world does it say that every Jew has to be a doctor, or a lawyer, or a CPA, or married? Wait. You learn to work with your hands, be a farmer on a Jewish settlement in Samaria, in Judea, in Gaza. Plant Jewish trees. Get married, have a ton of babies. Every Jewish child at Gemma diamonds. And then you'll gradually understand what Jewish life is about, and what pleasure is, and what the joy it is. Do that. Think about it carefully. Maybe if you go, you'll save your parents too, because then parents have this and a kind of unnatural love for their children, so they may come and visit you and then stay there also. We need Jews in Israel. And when people say that if all the Jews would come to Israel, who's going to give money to them? If all the Jews of America came with all their money, the UJ couldn't raise that in 2,000 years. These are the issues that I want to speak about tonight. They're not issues worthy of being spoken, debated, listened to. This was an insane evening, irrational. What a pity, what a tragedy, that all the Jews of Sarasota weren't here tonight. So when you leave, tell them about it. Tell them what they missed. At least thinking to stimulate thoughts for yourselves and for the Jewish people. One really final news, and then I'll take questions, and I'm sure you have a great American question. I'll try hard to answer. There's a Holocaust taking place at this moment in America. It's not a physical, it's a spiritual. Assimilation in a marriage, alienation of young Jews. We are losing our people. We are losing our people. And the blame lies squarely upon Jewish leaders, who for decades, the Jewish leadership in this country, whether the Navy, Britain, or Jewish Congress, or Jewish Committee, the federations, for decades, they waved high the banner of the melting pot, the 11th commandment, thou shalt melt. And we Jews were told to melt, because if we melted, then there would be no anti-Semitism, which is logical. If you melt and there are no Jews, that's one way to end anti-Semitism. And so Jews were told to melt in all manners of ways. Send your children to public school, not the yeshiva, God forbid a yeshiva. Yeshiva is so parochial. Send your child to public school so that he can meet all kinds. And then when he met all kinds and brought them home, the parents said, Gewalt, where did you meet her? Where did you meet her? Where did you expect him to meet in the public school? A chassid? And so, we didn't give money to day schools. The thing that bothered us most was that terrible tragedy that country clubs weren't taking in Jews. One of the great Jewish tragedies of all time. The American Jewish Committee and the Congress and the B'nai B'rith would go to court to fight to make sure that Jews would join the local country club. Anytime I hear of a court case between Jews and a country club, I'm on the side of the country club. Anytime. Anything to stop the Jew from finding it easier to marry the Jews. Think of what happens every day in America. Burning comes from the island. Jews tend to live in places that start with a definite R, the island. On the west coast is the valley. And so, in Atlanta they pray at the temple. A sociological concept which might be the subject of a term paper. Bernie lives on the island, and he goes to school at Berkeley or at Austin or at Madison or at Emory. And there he meets Bridget. He brings her home, and he says, Father, Mother, Mazata, and here we find the awakening, the renaissance, the rebirth of Judaism in parents who haven't kept the Sabbath for 40 years, whose closest brush with kosher food is a sometimes Sunday bagel. And suddenly the father cries out, Gewalt, but she isn't Jewish. Now, of course, Bernie hadn't realized it until that very moment, of course. Well, Bernie knows she's not Jewish, so he says to us, but look at her. I know she's not. Look at her. She's good looking. She's smart. You're not being Jewish to be smart. I really hate to break this to you. She's clever, and she's nice. She's what one might call a nice, non-Jewish girl. And I thought, but Bernie, you're a Jew. And then Bernie cries out that which has grown up within him for 20 years. He says, why should I be a Jew? I want to be a human being. Why should I be a Jew? What an incredible, such a simple question. Parents, in 25,000 words or more, could not answer it logically. Because most of the Jewish parents are emotional Jews. They're not logical Jews. They're emotional Jews. They're 2 steps away from an Orthodox family, so they remember Zaidi Babi. They remember Cholent. The average Jewish youngster will know Cholent from China. Half of the Jews here don't know China. All right. They're emotional Jews. They remember there's an emotion. You can't pass on an emotion to someone who has never felt it. Bernie wants a logical reason, not an emotional reason. He's a sophomore, so he's logical. They can't give him an answer. So they send him to the rabbi, the temple. The rabbi, this rabbi is one of the great orators of our time, and one of the great scholars of our time. Just the previous Saturday, he gave one of the great sermons of the decade in which he proved conclusively, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the Bible is a product of the myths of Sumer and Babylon. Tremendous sermon went far to emphasize Jewish consciousness. Every year he has the Friday night, the only Shabbat of the year, Interfaith Friday night. It is thousands come. And there's the rabbi and the minister and the priest and the group. Tremendous. And there sits Bernie and Bridget and all the Bernies and all the Bridges. And there the rabbi beams down upon and gives that massive Jewish conscience, as he says, there is no essential difference between Jews and Christians. We're all God's children. That is, of course, calculated to put an end to intermarriage. Of course. So they send this little Bernie, these poor desperate parents, to this rabbi, who is one of the great fighters against racism. He despises it, and his sermons, fire and brimstone against South Africa. Hates racism. And now he has to tell Bernie why he should marry a good-looking, smart, nice girl just because she isn't Jewish. What can this never rabbi say? What can he say? He can only say one thing. Bernie, to be Jewish is very important because Judaism is ethical. Of course, I hadn't realized. See, Protestants can't be ethical. Catholics can't be ethical. Buddhists can't be ethical. Only Jews can be ethical because he hates racism. The absurdity, the lack of logic is not lost upon Bernie or upon Bridget. We have destroyed our children because we have taken away from them the only reason in the world to be Jewish. What do we have that no one else has? What is different about Jews? Our skin, our blood? Nonsense. We have the same skin and the same blood as anyone else. That vaunted Jewish head, Jewish head. If I had $1 for every Jewish fool that I've ever met, I wouldn't be rich, but I'd be comfortable. That's what makes Jews different. There's only one thing that makes us different, and that's a Torah. That we stood at Mount Sinai and we heard God, and we saw God's manifestation, and he gave us a law, a divine law, which is truth. That's what makes us different. That's a reason not to marry Bridget. If not that, then there is indeed no reason. Then there is indeed no reason. And that's the tragedy that Jewish leaders who don't believe in that Torah get up and insist upon Jews being Jewish. You want to know what racism is? That's racism. That's racism. If you want to save your children and your grandchildren, know this rule. You cannot ever deceive a child. Children are genius. They're brilliant. They have an intuitive grasp of when parents are frauds. You send your child to Sunday school, Hebrew school, whatever it is, and if the child should ever come back and say, you know, the rabbi said that Jews don't eat bacon, don't ever say, oh, you don't have to listen to everything the rabbi tells you, and think that you're fooling the child. You can't fool children, ever. And children will forgive their parents every sin in the world except one: hypocrisy. Save your children. Make them Jewish. And if that means that you have to become Jewish too, or more Jewish, do it. Do it. See what we once had. What a wonderful life Jews once had, which we gave up for what? The suburbs, split level homes. For what? For what? Come back to being Jewish. Really Jewish. Authentically Jewish. And you'll see what a wonderful life it is. How wonderful it is to shake hands with Zadie and Bobby. I want to finish with just one Dvar Torah, a brief one. Because people always ask, is he with you, Rabbi? It's amazing. And what that says about all the other rabbis. The Talmud tells us that when God wanted to give the Torah to the Jewish people, all the mighty mountains, all the highest, loftiest mountains, they all rushed, and each one said, I want the honor. I want the honor. Give the Torah on my feet. And God said, no. I'm going to give the Torah to Sinai, Mount Sinai. Small mountain. Because I want to teach the Jews to be humble. That's the lesson. Small mountain, humble. Goes over well with the Sarasota, with the Jewish leadership here in Sarasota. But the Ger Rebbe, the Rebbe of Gura, who's a great scholar and also smart, says, he looked at this particular portion of the Talmud and he asked, there's something wrong. If God wanted to teach the Jews to be humble, he asked, why did he give the Torah in a valley? Honestly, is that not a good question? You don't get more humble. That's about the lowest. Yeah. You want to teach somebody to be humble? A valley. Good question. He gave a better answer. Listen, he said, because God wanted to teach the Jews 2 lessons. 1, be humble. 2, don't be too humble. Jews are in valleys. We're not arrogant mountains, but we are mountains. And know that faith in God and the powerful Jewish arm, that will bring the salvation of the Jewish people. Thank you. I'm sure that you have questions, and I'll try to have answers for you. Okay? Yes. Yes, sir.
I am a Gentile.
Yes.
And I've just really recently gotten acquainted with Jews, and I found them to be delightful people, and we're really friends.
Some.
But until I met you, and I hear you telling me that you will discriminate against me, you discriminate against Arabs, you want a Jewish state for Israel with no one else there, and I'd like to know what's the difference between you and Hitler beside ovens.
I don't want a question, but the fact that someone clapped for it is, now listen, Judaism is opposed to intermarriage. Opposed, not Meir, Kahane, and you've been talking to the wrong Jews. You can respect a Gentile, be friendly with a Gentile, and share things, but not in a marriage. We are a separate people. When the Bible says, "Lo is the people that shall dwell alone," that's not Meir Kahane speaking, that's Judaism.
I'm not talking about...
Madam, I listened to you, and I didn't interrupt you. Please don't stop me, because it brings me back to my Knesset days. Let me speak. What's the difference between what I'm saying and what the Germans did? Unbelievable question. If the Jews of Germany would have walked around saying, this is our country, the Germans stole it from us, and when we become the majority, we're going to take the country back and call it Israel. And in the meantime, we're going to plant bombs and kill Germans. And the Germans would have had every right to throw them out, not to kill them, to throw them out. Every right, indeed every obligation. But the German Jews wanted nothing more than to be the best Germans who ever lived. They were Germans. The Arabs want to be Jews or Israelis. The Arabs don't want Israel to be a Jewish state. They want to take it from us. And in the meantime, they plant bombs and they kill us. If you don't see that difference, then you had better do some soul searching of your own. You can now clap for my answer. Yeah. Sir. Wait. Yes.
Something that you said.
Yes.
You said that Western democracy played no part in the science of the Jewish people found on that.
Right.
And by the way, regards to Jerry Gould.
Thank you. Is that part of the question? What I said was that Western democracy as we know it is incompatible with Zionism. Western democracy demands that whoever is the majority shall be the majority. It demands the right of Arabs to peacefully vote Israel out of existence. I will never accept that. Ever. Ever. I am for democracy for every single Jew, no matter who he is and what he is. I'm not calling for a theocracy. I would love Jews to have a theocracy if they voted in as a democracy. But I am not about to force a minority view upon a majority of Jews. I'm committed to the same democratic state that Israel is now for all Jews. I'm not going to lose it to non-Jews.
How would you evict the Arabs who refuse to go?
What do you mean how? I'll put them on buses. I'll put them on buses, take them to the Allenby Bridge, hold the Allenby Bridge for 2 days, give them the Palestinians, and then give them back the bridge. There's nothing wrong with it. It's unbelievable. I'm talking about that if we don't do this, we are going to lose Israel. And you ask me, but how are we going to do it? You're going to do it. When Theodore Herzl got up in 1897, he said to his friends, I have a great idea, a Jewish state. They said, but how are you going to do it? He did it. If you have to do something to save yourself and your people, you go ahead and you do it. And it will get done. And it's timid people with no vision that walk up and say, how am I going to do it? Let me be the Prime Minister for 2 months, and you see how we will do it. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. The Jews lived there for thousands of years and faced together. And I see you mentioned a few incidents in the 1920s and 1938, another one. And all these other incidents that you mentioned, sporadic incidents with the Moshe and the other guy that killed in the army. What prompts us to say that it's actually an Arab that did that? Okay, and that's number one. Number two, as a rabbi is a religious leader who's supposed to promote love, peace, and facts and truth. Okay, I just pray to God. I see some beautiful faces here, and we in America enjoy democracy, we enjoy peace, living together. And I just hope to God, and I pray to God from the bottom of my heart, that none of these people go out here infected with your negative thoughts and with your racism and your hatred. Because if you're saying that racism should be for Jews, and I agree with this lady that if Hitler was a racist and you are a racist, so what difference between you and Hitler? I don't see it. And I pray to God that none of these people go out of here infected with your negative thoughts and hatred.
Okay, now,
Can you repeat the question, please?
actually there was a question. Sir, please sit down. He asked a question, and I'm answering it. My goodness, nervous people. Quietly, let's calm down and be moderate. I'm not going to answer your statement because it's a statement which is not worthy of an answer. But your question was, how do we know that it was Arabs that did it? Because we caught them and they admitted it. An interesting concept. It's an interesting concept. Maybe that doesn't go over well here. We even read them their rights. I hope that no one walks out of this room infected by this kind of thinking. Yes.
This is not a question, and certainly Kahane, I have trouble saying your name.
Kahane.
Okay, doesn't need someone to speak for him, because certainly I don't think anybody can speak his thoughts as eloquently as he can. But I think that he tried to make very clear that he's not a racist, and there's many people, Jews, non-Jews, religious, non-religious, that believe that had there been a state of Israel, there would not have been a Holocaust. And so the state of Israel, many people feel, Zionist or non-Zionist, I'm not into that stuff, but many people feel that the state of Israel must exist to protect the Jews of the world. And what the rabbi is basically saying here is that the state of Israel was formed as a Jewish state and can become a non-Jewish state by virtue of demographics. And that the fact is, as he very eloquently said, by and large, and I think, again, we have to separate that there's no all-inclusive statements. He said there's not one Arab in Israel that's happy there. There might be one, there might be 10, but there's millions or hundreds of thousands that are not. And they're a serious threat to welfare of that state. So I think, there may be small things that you don't agree with the rabbi on, but by and large, you have to look at the total picture of what he's saying.
I want to say again, there's not one who enjoys living in a Jewish state.
Why?
Because he's not a Jew. Because there are laws in Israel that don't apply to him.
I don't think that's the reason, because
Sir,
I believe for
sir,
2,000 years,
sir, one. You spoke. No one spoke when you spoke, right? There's not one Arab in Israel who wants to live in a Jewish state. That's called normal. There's not one Jew in America who would enjoy living in a Christian state. What is so difficult to comprehend? There is, I didn't say that there is not one Arab who is happy living in Israel. There are many Arabs who are happy living in Israel. Why not? Jews serve in the army, Arabs don't. Jews pay full taxes, Arabs don't. Jews pay for every single Arab baby that is born. We pay for national insurance every month for every baby. There was an article in the paper 2 months ago about a Bedouin Arab in the Negev, in the town of Rabbi, has 48 children. 48 children. 6 wives, 48 children. We pay him every month 48 checks. You think that we are normal? No, we are not normal. We are insane. What country, what nation subsidizes its own doom? No, none except us. None except us. None except us. Racism, once and for all, let's put an end to this nonsense. Racism is a concept that says that a certain person or a group of people is permanently tainted. Permanently. They can never be as good as a second. That's racism. Like in South Africa, blacks can never be as good as whites, or in Germany, non-Aryans can never be Aryans. I'm a racist. I say that any non-Jew who becomes Jewish is as Jewish as Meir Kahane. It isn't a racial difference. It's a religious difference, which can be changed. My goodness, it's basic logic. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it seems like we hear more and more frequently people question. We hear more and more frequently people questioning all the foreign aid and money that the United States sends Israel, and what are we getting for our money?
Right.
My question is, what would the consequences be if Israel doesn't get American foreign aid?
Okay. That's a very good question, an important question, and one that which finally has to go to the First of all, understand one thing. No country in this world helps other countries because they're nice. Get that clear. Stop listening to your Jewish leaders with their yo-yo comments such as, America helps us because it is the only democracy in the Middle East. Of course, we all know that America helps only democracies. Franco, Spain, Salazar's Portugal, the Kurds of Greece, Taiwan, South Korea. Countries help other countries out of self-interest. That's the name of the game, out of self-interest. And that's the way it should be. America doesn't help Israel out of anything except self-interest. America's major interest in that region is a strong, powerful, stable, anti-Soviet ally. It has a big choice, either Israel or Abu Dhabi. Israel is a stable country, a powerful country. Israel has a Haifa naval base which is open constantly, freely to the U.S. fleet. The Negev is a storage area at this moment for tons upon tons of U.S. weapons in case of a war. Israelis fly American F-16 jets in real combat and then show the Americans what is wrong with it in real combat, and how much is that worth? Americans put out the Soviet-made missiles and shot down 82 Syrian planes and lost none, and then show the Americans how it was done. How much was that worth? Americans captured the first T-72 Soviet tank and showed it to the CIA. How much was that worth? If Israeli aid is not worth it, then America should not give Israel money. If it is worth it, then stop fetching. Your partners have to be equal partners. Now, as far as economic aid is concerned, when I'm the Prime Minister, one of the first things that we will do is we will begin to phase out American economic aid. It doesn't help us, it hurts us. It stops us from dealing with our real economic problems and dealing with them. We have become some economic junkie that gets his annual fix. Instead of dealing with the real problems, Israel is a basket case. It lives like some shtetl beggar. With his hand out to everybody. You don't build a country is not a shul.
So how do we get you mayor? What do we got?
Excuse me, wait a minute. Israel has got to, first of all, put an end to the bureaucracy and the socialism and have a free enterprise system in which people will work, and if they work, there's an incentive and won't be taxed and permits and licenses, and that's what has to be. We Jews made every country in which we live wealthy except Israel. In Florida, you want to open up a store, what do? You find a store, and you open a store, finished. In Israel, it's an adventure. My God, the bureaucracy, only Satan could have invented that. I know Jews from America, good Jews, others who want to build factories in Israel instead of in Taiwan or in Hong Kong. You go to Israel, you go through the 7 circles of Jewish hell. Israel's got to learn to stand on its own feet. These people have got to learn to work hard, tighten their belts. Do away with this economic aid, which not only is not good for us in economic terms, it also gives political leverage and pressure upon Israel. The whole Rabbi project was junked not because of monies, but because of U.S. pressure. And this is a great, great country here. And it's a great, great ally of Israel. But there are interests which, of course, differ. So you had better believe that Israel will survive without that economic aid. In fact, the best thing is for Israel to finally go cold turkey. We'll have to suffer not importing German cars and color TVs. May not survive. We'll have to learn to work hard. Jews will have to learn to work. Jews will have to learn to collect garbage and be carpenters and build buildings and become normal. And believe me, all of that is going to be when with God's help, I'm going to be the Prime Minister. Yes?
Rabbi, when you are the Prime Minister and the Arabs are out, how would you deal with the problem that exists between the Hasidim and the secular Jews who have different lifestyles?
Obviously, we'll have to learn to live together. I'm an Orthodox Jew who would love to see every single Jew an observant Jew. But I'm not going to throw stones at these people. One of the great things about the Kahane movement, which I head, is that it is a movement based upon total concepts. And 80% of our voters are non-Orthodox Jews. It's a tremendous thing. It's an unheard of thing in Israel. Our members are mixed from black captain, black coats to people who are totally secular. I have deep, deep beliefs, deep, deep faith that if the education of Israel is changed so that youngsters are taught the beauties of being Jewish, we'll be able to move people closer together. I have great, great faith in it. I have seen it in my own movement. There's no reason why that which is not in my own movement cannot be in all of Israel. One thing, I know what love of Jews is. I sat in prison in this country for a year because I love Jews. And I did for Russian Jews. And I never asked whether Orthodox Jews, unorthodox Jews. A Jew is a Jew, period. And I think that when you have a movement or a government which is run and headed by such people, that will go a great way to move people closer together. It won't solve all the problems. Jews throughout history have never solved all their problems. The most that we can do is dull the sharp edges and get them to learn to speak to each other. And I think that we can do that. I know that we do it in our own party. And more than that, I can't tell you. I'll give it my best shot. And hopefully it'll work.
Am I to understand that you don't want peace in the Middle East?
Yes, if that's what you will learn from it, then I suppose after speaking for an hour and a half, if that's what you got out of it, I don't know. I can't imagine what I can tell you in a 2-minute answer. Sir, I live in Israel and you don't. I serve in the army, but of course I don't want peace. My sons are in the army, but I don't want peace. Only you want peace because you're here in Florida. Of course I want peace, but I'm no fool. Who didn't want peace?
On what terms you
Sir,
want?
sir, if you asked it, you finish it.
On what terms do you want peace?
Is that the question?
Yeah, that's
Good.
the question.
Now sit down and answer. Now, on what terms I want peace? What land we have, we keep. What land the Arabs have, they keep. Let's make peace. Great, great peace terms. They could have had the West Bank had they not gone to war in 1967. They could have had a lot more had they not gone to war in 1947. Now, the Arabs have got to learn something. The Arabs think that war is some kind of a game. You start a war, you lose. Go back to go. No. You start a war and you lose, you lose. All right.
Any other country that has
I
gone
thought
to
that
war-
was the end of the question.
Excuse me. You want to talk? You ask
I didn't ask you
the
anything.
question. You ask the question. We ask a few words. You answer. You talk for 10 minutes.
Naturally, because I'm the speaker. Go on. Talk.
I think that the Jews and the Arabs can live in peace in
Okay.
the Middle East. And I think we should work towards that. Not the way you want to do it.
Okay,
But democracy for Jews only.
what's your way? Tell me.
Well, why do Jews have democracies in every other country?
Because in no other country is there a Jewish state. A pretty good
You want
reason.
it both ways.
Sir, do you think that Israel should be a Jewish state?
I'm an Arab, and I lived among Jews, and I like the Jews. I like them all.
Gee, thanks.
A lot of people. Now, that is a bad statement to make. I understand that.
Yes, it is. It certainly is. You have no idea how big.
Sick and tired of listening, that I like Jews. But
It's okay.
However, you can't have it both ways. You have to sacrifice, we have to sacrifice, everybody's sacrificing. You must get along. You can't stay at war forever.
Sir, in the constitution of every Arab country, it states, every Arab country states, that that country is an Arab Islamic state. Every Arab country.
That's not true. Lebanon doesn't have that.
Lebanon is not a country.
Now,
Lebanon is not a country, and Lebanon never was a country. It was made up of all kinds of faiths and so on, based upon quotas. You want quotas? Lebanon stated that the Christians must always have the power. Is that what you want for Israel? Wonderful. That's exactly what I want for Israel. Jews must always have power. Is that good for you?
You know, Rabbi, you make the distinction about Arabs. Actually, if an Arab is a Jew, which an Arab can be, so we almost should say Muslim and Jew.
Well,
is that correct?
No, because Christian Arabs,
Only Christian, okay.
Christian Arabs don't love Jews any more than Muslim Arabs. George Habash is a Christian Arab. He's the most extreme. Or Fawatna is a Christian Arab. So, while I don't envy the Christian Arabs if the Muslim Arabs would ever take over Israel, I don't envy the Christian Arabs. But in the meantime, they are both linked to hatred of Israel. In any case, sir, I want a Jewish state. You as an Arab, obviously don't want a Jewish state. And I understand that, and I appreciate that. And you should realize that of all the people in Israel that understands the Arabs, I'm the one. I understand the Arabs. Believe me, I understand them. And that's why I'm not going to play games with you. You want peace? Fine, let's have peace. I'm ready to sit down with any Arab right now. Let's have peace. At these boundaries.
Mr. Kahane, don't you resent when somebody compares you to Hitler?
Of course I do, but...
I'm born against scientists. Don't you resent it?
You're right, I do. But, sir, listen to me. When you walk in the street, for example, if you walk in, the question was, don't I resent and burn when someone gets up, dares me to hit them? When you walk in the street, and the dog rushes out at you and starts barking at you, you don't bark back. Just you're not a dog. All right? Yes.
You mentioned it was an economic collapse.
Yes.
Now, we're experiencing something like certain numbers. We're experiencing some of that now.
Yes.
I am of the belief that this is an economic system. If I go out and I see some ignoramus in a saloon, which I don't know, and he blames the Jews for this because 2 or 3 people happen to be Jews got caught in insider trading. And then we fan the flames in order to divert them away from the real cause, which is the collapse of the economic system, and not the Jewish traders. Aren't you doing somewhat of a disservice here? And above all, putting the American Jew in a very tenuous position when you say, forget this country, go to Israel, your loyalty is there, and not say here, find out a system that basically will bring out these anti-Jewish, anti-Arab, whatever you will, in order to hide the basic position of which is inevitable for us.
Look, I certainly love this country. And this country has been a wonderful country for the Jews. Really a wonderful country. Sir, that which was is not necessarily that which will always be. And we've been burned enough in countries which were good to us and which changed. That's why I say think about it very, very carefully. Now, as far as what you're saying, I think everybody here knows that it is foolish to blame a group for economic factors. But that's a great, great statement to make on a intellectual plane. But most people aren't logical. Most people are psychological and emotional. And when people are terrified and afraid and desperate and have no hope, they don't sit and listen to logical things. They listen to demagogues. You don't think that Germans in the 1920s and 1930s were logical people? Of course they were. They were cultured people, civilized people. They so panicked that they voted for Hitler. And Hitler didn't seize power. He was voted in. So I can say that everything that you said is correct. It's a problem, an economic problem. It's a system. Let's say that that's true. But that's not relevant to the unraveling of the social fabric when people panic. And that's the real problem. It's a psychology of panic. Why did the market collapse 500 points in one day? You can give reasons, but the real reason was there was a psychological panic. There was kind of a herd, it was a kind of a mentality of the herd. People started running, and others ran too, and then others ran, and so on and so forth. So intellectually, you're right. But that's not what makes the world get around.
I'd just like to say, let's have two more questions. These people had their hands up, you, and then I'd like to make Rabbi Kahane the honoree.
Honoree? Yes, sir.
Could you explain to the group
Yes.
your feelings of leadership and how it relates to the Jewish leadership?
Well, first of all, the question was, what is my concept of leadership, and how does that tie in, relate to Jewish leadership? First of all, leadership calls for men of vision. Jewish leadership calls for men of vision that is based upon Jewish concepts. A Jewish leader should be chosen, first of all, for his Jewish scholarship, and for his Jewish practice, and for his Jewishness. The Jewish leader in America is not chosen for that. He's chosen for his money, and for his ability to raise money. That's not a leader. It's a good executive director. Is it a Jewish leader? When I read about the head of Israel Barnes, Sam Roth, he's the head of Israel Barnes and one of the major Jewish leaders in this country. Now, Sam Roth, his wife, is a deaconess at St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Peoria. That's a Jewish leader. A Jewish leader is a role model. So Jewish youngsters should look up and say, that's a Jewish leader. What can you tell some Jewish youngster against, intermarrying, if he then turns and says, but if I intermarry, I may become head of Israel Barnes? Jewish leaders have to be people that are immersed in Jewishness, in Jewish practice, Jewish scholarship. I have nothing against the money. I think money is great. In fact, if any of you would like to give us money, fine. But that's not the major role of a Jewish leader. A Jewish leader is to serve as a role model. They're supposed to have a vision, to be able to see tomorrow. And that's how I see it. And if that's so, we don't have Jewish leaders. We don't have Jewish leaders. This is a generation of paupers in terms of leadership. And maybe it's not just the Jews. I think that the whole world lacks a leadership. I mean, look at this. Leadership.
This kid had his hand up a long time.
Yes, okay.
Let's say that Israel becomes the Jewish state like you want.
Yes.
When will the killing stop?
Well, first of killings will ever stop, but they'll certainly be cut down enormously. When a bomb goes off in Jerusalem, and the Israeli Air Force goes and bombs a PLO office in Sidon, in Lebanon, that's kind of absurd. No one in Sidon put the bomb in Jerusalem. If there would be no Arabs in Jerusalem, you wouldn't have bombs. That stands to reason. Every so often, there may be some incident from across the border, every so often. But believe me, I served in the Army. It's really quite a sealed border. It's extremely difficult for Arabs to get across. Almost any, I don't say it's impossibility, one or two can, in that case. So I certainly am not going to be a demagogue. So if you do what I say, there'll be peace and no more killers. No, I won't say that. But certainly cut it down enormously. Enormously. And every Jewish life saved. It's certainly worth it. Let's really, at this point, 3 more questions until 10. Yes. Yeah.
You become prime minister, and immediately become that there are mass conversions of Arabs to Judaism.
Well, that's why, sir, it's important to have Orthodox rabbis. They don't just jump at a convert. Whoever wants to convert, we'll sit and say, Manishtana, what makes this night different from all the other nights? Why suddenly this thing? You wait for a year. Meantime, go to Jordan and take lessons. And if you still want to, in a year, come back and we'll see. I may be what I am, but one thing, I'm not, a fool. Yes.
Rabbi, just a couple comments. One thing you said about the quality of the rabbis in a community such as ours, and it can be multiplied by many other small communities, and the redeeming feature or quality is that the people only know half as much. It reminds me of a statement that Chairman Vanderbilt used to say, and you might use this. He would say, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. But more directly on what you had to say, I think you can look around the world and you can see any country in which there is a large, hostile, unhappy, rebellious element, be it the Catholics and Protestants in Northern Ireland, be it the Basques in Spain, be it this island Sri Lanka where the Tamils were rebelling, be it the French and the Flemish, be it the fact that Pakistan had to be formed because the Hindus and the Muslims couldn't live together, the fact that the Kurds still rebel in that area where Iran, Iraq, and Turkey come together, and many other instances which I can't recall at the moment. I think it's obvious that there's no country that can exist in peace in which there is a large, hostile, foreign in the sense of culture or language or religion. There is no such country that can exist in peace. And Israel is simply the same. You cannot have such a large, hostile, foreign minority and have peace within the country.
I could not have put it better.
I just want to echo, I don't think there are many people here to hear this, excuse for the acquisition of a synonym, but it's really tragic that Jewish families don't have more children. I agree, the world's overpopulated. 1 billion Chinese are enough Chinese. 800 million Indians are enough Indians. But there are not enough Jews. We're overpopulated, but we're not overpopulating the wrong kind of people. And we know that it takes 2.7 people to replace 2 people. And since half of our children are intermarrying, we need 5.4 to replace 2. And Jewish families aren't having that number. For some reason, 2 is the magic number, particularly if one's a boy and one's a girl, because all our American advertisements and TV shows show that. And I've been married, or I was married 3 years and 7 months, November 1st, and I had my third child. And I thank God.
I must tell you that anytime you would like to be my minister of anything,
Well, I'm a doctor, but I don't want to be minister of health.
all right, okay.
Gloria?
Yes.
That has said to the Arab people living in Israel, come to us, we'll give you land, we'll make a home, or help you make a home. I've not heard of Arab countries offering to take the unhappy Palestinians out of Israel. Israel took the Ethiopian Jews, Israel took the refused it, saying we did struggle to take our own people. Tell me, are there Arab countries that have offered to take the Palestinians out of Israel?
No, but I must say, of course, fair about it. Because all the Arab countries, all believe that the Palestinians should live in Palestine, and that Palestine should be in place of Israel. And that is the problem. That is the problem. However, know one thing. That when Jordan went to war, when it was called Transjordan, 1947 and 48 against Israel, and it conquered the West Bank, it did not create there a Palestinian state for the Palestinians. It took it for itself. And when the Egyptians captured the Gaza Strip, it did not create a mini Palestine homeland for the Palestinians. It kept it for itself. And if you look at the Syrian maps of the region, it calls that entire region of Jordan and Israel, that is southern Syria. So, if the Arabs can't live with themselves, how in the world do we expect them to live with us? In any case, that's Scouts on the last one. Okay, it's the witching hour 10. Yes. What? The best form of government for Israel would be a theocracy. However, unbelievable. It's a theocracy. If that's a theocracy, then Iran is made up of the Democratic Party. I would like a theocracy, but I will never impose it, because I will never go to a civil war against Jews, ever. Therefore, well, I know what I would like to have. I'm committed to a democracy, the present form of government of Israel. Every 4 years, any party runs, and whatever, who's the majority is the majority. And so, I'm not happy with it, because I believe that the Torah is God's truth, and that you don't vote every 4 years on truth. But I'm committed to democracy, because I will never start a civil war with the Jewish people.
I don't have a question. I don't have a question, but I have a simple clarification for what would need to be an irritating question. I believe the difference was that you wanted to use buses and send Arabs to the country of their choice. I believe Hitler used a train, and he only sent them to one home, and it was to his maker.
Very good comment. All right. As we're leaving, I just want to let you know that Rabbi Kahane is the honoree, and we're going to present him with a $5,000 check for visiting with us and sharing his views. And I think it's an enlightened procedure. And this is something that it's my wish that you see this, and I requested it through the Sarasota Manatee Jewish Foundation, of which I have a philanthropic fund, and I just want to honor Kahane with it, and and I know it will be put to good use, and I feel this is some of the best money I ever spent.
Really, thank you very, very much.
Rabbi.
Shalom, shalom.
For those who believe Israel is a democracy, would you please tell them that it has no constitution? Surprise them.
It has no constitution. Surprise.